Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel. Thank you for joining this live stream. In this chat, I'd like to talk about how the organs of justice and what was once justice, police, bureaus of investigation, district attorneys' offices, public prosecutors' offices, police forces on the ground, have all been politicized, and they're now being used as ideological political police, not to deal with crime, or actual crimes, but to deal with or to ensure the strict enforcement of globalist policies and to clear the way ahead for the globalist project. And the Western governments, who are now owned completely by the globalists, of course, are giving the administrative support for this sort of political policing. Now, in the West, we're not really used to political policing. There was maybe sort of examples of it, say during war, where the chance of imminent armed invasion was at hand, and therefore, amidst the panic and the tumult, there were some overly zealous applications of the law. There have been those sorts of things, but they've been brief, and there has been more accountability certainly then than we're seeing now, when there is no war. But there is a war. It's an ideological war. And just to give you some examples, critical race theory is being taught in schools, and it's across the West, and it's being taught white people are all bad, white history is all bad, and anything that replaces white society or a white majority society, anything that replaces it is better than what we currently have and have had. And the guilt of white people is so all-encompassing that they barely deserve legal rights. White people themselves should grovel on the floor to beg forgiveness for their ideological crimes. Now, this is a very important part of the globalist project. They must crush white people. Unless they do that, the globalist project will not go into places they would like to see it, at least. So the crushing of white people is absolutely central. So the central part of crushing white people is to get to young children and fill them with guilt, and fill all other minorities with hatred against white people, to even undermine white people's confidence to the point where they hate themselves. And they're doing, as you can see, a pretty decent job. I mean, look at some of the white kids in university, for Christ's sake. So it's a very important part of the globalist project to indoctrinate children and inculcate in them the fact that something must replace what has existed and currently exists, because anything is better than white society, because white society is so bad, so evil, so wicked, so racist, so bigoted, so xenophobic, so whatever. So it has to be replaced. So this is a very important part of the globalist project. So when you go to a school board meeting, as is happening in the United States at the moment, and elsewhere, by the way, but particularly the United States, and say, well, I don't want my kids being taught to hate, to become, to judge people based on race. I don't want my kids to hate white people. I don't like my kids having forced upon them this gender fluidity, which is all part of destabilizing society. It's got nothing to do with gender fluidity. They don't give a fuck about that. But it is a great tool for destabilizing. And this is all part of the globalist project. So in another, as they would see it, another 20 years or less, then every white person in existence and everyone else will be filling all the key roles. They're all going to hate themselves. Everyone's going to hate white people, and the globalists can then do whatever it is they want to do at their leisure, and that's how they want it to be. But if you go to a school board meeting and oppose that, then you're directly opposing the globalist agenda. You're interfering with the globalist agenda, and they will not brook interference. They will not accept their agenda being tampered with by anybody. Now, their agenda is outrageous. It's got to be one of the most incredible, ridiculous fantasies that I think I've ever heard. It even transcends the nonsense that the communists and Chairman Mao and all the Pol Pot came out with. It is absolutely insane. But they're doing this for the globalist project, the indoctrination of children, And children as young as 3 or 4 years old are being taught about gender fluidity, for Christ's sakes. It's similarly insane. So if you complain about it as a parent, you are directly attacking the globalist project, and that won't be accepted. The political police will come after you, and they will make your life miserable. And that's what we're seeing now. So if you see it as just an issue of parents, concerned parents going to the school board and saying, hey, stop teaching this crap, and excuse me, what about these gender fluidity books being put on 5-year-olds and gay lesbian stories being shoved down their throats? It's not about that. That's not the way the globalists see it. Is you're attacking their project and you're attacking their indoctrination machine, and they won't accept that. And that's where it comes from. It's nothing to do with the school or your kids or that literature per se. It's about the wider globalist project. Now, with that in mind, to get the globalists know that nobody really wants, they've got nothing to sell with the globalization project, nothing. It's going to lower the standards of living of every white person. And so, and considerably so, and it already is. So the globalists can't sell it. They've got nothing to sell. What are they going to say? You'll own nothing. You'll have fuck all, and you'll be happy. Or say that's really all they can do. And so there's nothing to sell. They've got nothing to say. Well, wow, look at this great program. It's going to do so well for you. Peasants from dirt poor third world basket case countries being brought to the West. Well, they're going to do a bit better out of it. And some of them have even said to me. That if all the wealth in the world is spread around evenly, then that's going to be an improvement. So that no matter how lazy, useless, stupid, low IQ, corrupt, or hopeless you are, you should have the same amount of wealth as someone who is sober, hardworking, incorruptible, very bright and creates wealth. It should be all equal. And so the peasants from the basket case countries think globalization is not so bad, but only because of the free stuff, free stuff, gimme, and they only see it as desirable from that perspective. But coming back to this idea of politicizing all the organs of what once was called justice or was believed to be justice, there was a lot of faith in the justice systems in the Western world, certainly by the majority, myself among them, and they used that faith, that trust in institutions to undermine the very concept of justice and jurisprudence and rule of law and due legal process. And they, if ever you'd say, if anyone would ever say, well, look at what you're doing. No, we're not. Conspiracy theory, and they dismiss it. While they were absolutely going hammer and tongs in undermining the entire justice system. And just recently, there was a situation in an Australian city where a police hit squad came and started harassing a journalist on the street. The car pulls up, out come the goon squad, and they do the papers stuff, and clearly it's harassment. They're looking for any irregularity or any box not ticked or something like that to use as a pretext for harassing these journalists or shutting them down or ordering them out of the area or something like that. Now the journalists, remember, have committed no crime. So they're being harassed without there being any what we would reasonably say is due cause. There's no due cause for this harassment. Now, interestingly, in the banter between the journalists and the police, the police admitted they were being directly instructed from the Department of Prosecutions. So now this is, a lot of people would have missed that, or they think, okay, well, so what? Who gives a shit? But the issue here is the way the system, well, hitherto at least, worked was there were laws on the books, clear laws about what constituted criminal behaviour. And there's some obvious ones like, I don't know, break and enter, arson, murder, assault, those sorts of things. So, and somebody would report it to the police, or the police would see an incident. The police would then gather evidence. Maybe they'd arrest somebody, and then they would go to the Department of Prosecution to say, look, this is the evidence we've got on such and such a crime. And we've got someone we've arrested for it, who is guilty, by the way, until who was innocent, by the way, until proven guilty in a court of law. So they've arrested somebody. So they go to the Department of Public Prosecution, say, this is what we've got. Now, the prosecution's office then look at it on the basis of, well, do we think we can get a conviction with the evidence that's available? So when we front the judge, do we have a strong case or a weak case or a hopeless case or a 50-50 case? They have to make that decision, and they're lawyers, or they're meant to be. Now, then the case would proceed to court in the event they thought they were in with a good show, or they'd drop the case. Say, look, we're not going to do this. Try and get a plea deal with the person you've arrested to try and at least get them on something. Otherwise, you're going to have to let them go. So now that's how the system works, and I think it's it's not perfect, obviously, but that's how it was. Now things have changed. That's not the situation anymore. The Department of Public Prosecutions is creating, in effect, a situation of pre-crime. So you hold the wrong views, you are challenging the globalist project, therefore we're going to harass you until we can find a pre-crime incident to use against you. And they're becoming more and more arbitrary in these efforts and this pursuit. So the Department of Public Prosecutions now is micro-directing individual police officers to go after a specific person or group. Now that's straight out of the political police, secret police, KGB, Stasi handbook. And it is not acceptable in a Western society. And our politicians and our media need to stand up to this and call it out for what it is. It is political fucking policing and is not acceptable. Now, we're seeing this, I think we're seeing an expansion of this across the Western world. You know, the case the examples in the United States of, say, the FBI directly targeting parents who are concerned about outrageous racist bullshit propaganda being fed to their children in school. They elect these school boards. The taxes that they pay for it, and yet somehow they've got no right to ask questions. It's insane. But there you go. And they're saying, well, because you're questioning the globalist project, you're therefore a terrorist, or you're therefore a bigot, or you're a Nazi or a fascist. You're this, you're that, and therefore we can now target you. So they simply change the definition, and they can make vague assertions, and that's enough. And you saw this years ago in the divorce courts, where an alleged expert, who was no fucking expert of any sort, but they are an activist, would be brought into court. Maybe they were some bullshit psychologist or something, brought into court, and they said, well, if the children see the father, they may resort to self-harm. And the evidence for this is, well, there is none. It's the opinion of a radical man-hating activist. But that's it. That's good enough for the activist judge. They now have a reason to say, well, that's it. Potential child abuser can't see the children. For example, I could come up with other examples, but for example, that one. So vague assertion with ideological pre and post treatment of vague assertion, no evidence needed, and it's all. So it's the same as when these parents go in and complain about the outrageous stuff that the school boards are doing, who are themselves, they're just ideological warriors. They're not teachers. They're just there to see the globalist project is put in place, and that project involves radical propaganda, indoctrination of children. So if you complain about it or say something about it, then the escalation thing, well, you've complained about something that's important to the globalist project, that you've complained, thus makes you an enemy of the globalist project. As an enemy of the globalist project, you are therefore a terrorist. And then that assertion can take place. Do we need to prove it? Hell no. We can just say you're a terrorist, and we can intimidate and harass the crap out of you, and we're going to use the organs of what once was the justice system to do it. Meanwhile, you can have broad shootouts in broad daylight in Chicago streets for the district attorney to say, no, nothing to see here, move along. So this is the situation we're in now, and these police taking, or could be the FBI or something like that, being directed straight out of a politicized political office. Go after this guy, do this, say that, use this pretext, make this claim, send the SWAT team to go and drag someone into the, and drag them out in chains, this sort of thing. That's it. Now, because the media is not providing scrutiny for this, because they're all owned by the globalists anyway, in fact, they're cheering it on, for goodness sakes, there is no effective method to stop this, not from only where it is at the moment, but disintegrating even further into just arbitrary, in my view, arbitrary chaos. So we have to pull back from this brink here of politicized hit squad policing, and we've got to come back to, I believe, the basics of clear laws that are tabulated and on the books for all to see, and that all citizens have to abide by the law, but so do all the authorities, and so do the police, and so does the district attorney, so do the attorneys general. We all have to abide by the law. That's why it's there, but it must be clear and tabulated, not some vague assertion of, we say you're a terrorist, therefore the law, we can bypass all laws, we can bypass all due legal process. Every elected representative across the Western world should be up in arms and screaming about this and demand its immediate reversal and full accountability for those who have behaved illegally, hiding behind these vague assertions. That's my take. You've been with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.